didn't arrive with noise. No flashing badge, no entourage, no announcement to part the air. Just presence, a calm, commanding presence that unsettled those two used to judging worth by face and fabric. Eyes followed him like a rumor, the kind that spreads before it's spoken, suspicion hanging heavier than the air conditioning. Behind counters, whispers flickered. Behind uniforms, assumptions calcified. In a place where polished floors gleamed with false welcomes. One man's silence threatened everything they thought they understood. They saw what they wanted to see. What they refused to imagine was that this man, black, composed, unreadable, wasn't lost, wasn't bluffing, and wasn't there to make a deposit. He was there to change everything. What happened next would go viral, but what came after would rewrite the meaning of power and make the entire country look twice. If you're here now, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. The revolving doors at Kingsley National Bank glided open with a soft whoosh as Darius King stepped through, his polished Oxfords glinting beneath tailored charcoal slacks. He adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke jacket, the fine texture catching the morning light as he passed under the brass fixtures of the marble entryway. A briefcase hung at his side, sleek, black, and understated, much like the man who carried it. His expression was calm but focused, a quiet gravity in the way his eyes took in the reception hall, from the brushed gold trim to the vaulted ceilings. This wasn't just a visit, it was a step toward ownership. And yet, from the moment his foot touched the granite floor, something in the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't the decor. It wasn't the distant hum of conversation or the muffled footsteps echoing off pristine tile. It was the woman behind the reception desk. Her nameplate read Chelsea, etched neatly beneath the bank's crest. She didn't smile, didn't greet him, just blinked once, then twice, as if processing something she hadn't expected. "Deliveries are through the side entrance," she said, not asking, assuming. Her tone was brisk, mechanical, the kind used when speaking to service staff. Darius blinked, unsure if he'd heard her correctly. "I'm here for an appointment," he said, voice level, unbothered, as if giving her a second chance to reset. "Client meeting." She looked him up and down again, slower this time, her lips pressed together. "Name?" "Darius King," he replied. She typed, deliberate, slow, before frowning at her monitor. "I don't see anything. Are you sure it was today?" She didn't offer to check further, didn't look again, just stared, suspicion tightening her features. Darius inhaled through his nose. "Yes, 9:30, confirmed by your corporate liaison yesterday." She didn't hide her skepticism. "What's the nature of your visit?" "Business acquisition," he replied. That made her blink. Once, then twice. "One moment," she said stiffly, lifting the phone and turning away. Darius stood in silence, ignoring the eyes drifting toward him from the line of patrons waiting behind the cordoned ropes. He was used to it. He shouldn't have been, but he was. Moments later, a slim man in a gray suit approached from the hallway behind reception. His badge read Branch Manager Gregory Sims. He gave a perfunctory smile, tight and dismissive. "Mr. King." "That's right." Sims barely glanced at the tablet Chelsea handed him. "No deliveries today, Mr. King." "I'm not making a delivery," Darius said quietly. "I'm here to meet with—" Right, Sims said quickly, cutting him off. "You're looking for work?" "Excuse me." Sims gestured vaguely, as if waving away a mosquito. "We get a lot, people showing up with resumes, thinking we're hiring. We're not." Darius stiffened. He didn't raise his voice, didn't break stride. "I'm here to meet with Elizabeth Hannigan, Senior VP of Mergers and Expansion." Silence settled for a beat. Then Sims's posture changed, just barely, but not for the better. He squinted, skeptical. "You're here to meet Elizabeth?" "Yes." "For what exactly?" "To acquire Kingsley National Bank." The words were simple, clean, factual, but they dropped between them like stone. Sims didn't laugh, but something flickered behind his eyes. Disbelief, contempt. "I see," he said finally, tone flat. "Well, Miss Hannigan's schedule is, I imagine, quite full." She confirmed the meeting herself, Darius said. Can you have someone escort me to the executive floor? Sims hesitated again, then turned toward Chelsea. Check with scheduling, he muttered. Maybe he slipped through somehow. Chelsea frowned but did as she was told, her fingers clacking against the keys with thinly veiled irritation. I'm sorry, she said after a moment. We're still not seeing it. Sims nodded, then turned back to Darius. Why don't you take a seat? I'll see what I can do. But the gesture was false, a stalling tactic. Darius was led not to the business lounge, where financial clients typically waited, but to a plain chair near the bank's side entrance, close enough to security that he could be watched. The message was clear. You don't belong. He sat in silence, folding his hands over the briefcase in his lap. Across the lobby, two suited bankers laughed together as they sipped coffee, one tossing a glance his way. A woman in a tailored skirt walked past and clutched her purse tighter. It was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that brought peace. This was the kind that spoke of judgment, of suspicion. Minutes passed, then more. No word from Sims, no check-in from Chelsea, just glances, half smiles, the occasional sideways stare that lingered too long. A security guard passed within a few feet of him, circled back, stood nearby, arms crossed. You need something? Darius asked, voice calm but tired. The guard didn't answer, just shook his head and moved on. Darius exhaled. He thought of the documents in his briefcase. The letter of intent signed by the board. The acquisition details, ironclad. He thought of the email from Hannigan confirming this morning's meeting. And yet here he was, a man with every credential, every right to be in this building, being treated like a trespasser. They stopped at a waiting area outfitted with minimalist leather chairs and a credenza holding glossy magazines. Please have a seat. I'll just check in with her assistant. Darius sat, alone. Again, no greeting, no water offered. The assistant behind the glass desk didn't look up from her computer. He waited. Minutes passed. He checked his watch. 10 o'clock. 30 minutes past his scheduled meeting. Finally, the assistant stood and approached, arms crossed, her heels clicking across the tile. She looked like she'd just walked out of a fashion editorial. Sharp suit, sharper attitude. Mr. King, she asked, voice cool. Yes. I'm sorry, but it appears your meeting with Miss Hannigan may have been rescheduled. He blinked. Rescheduled? No one informed me of any change. Well, she said, glancing down at a tablet in her hand, these things happen. High-level schedules can shift quickly. Did anyone attempt to notify me? He asked. I confirmed with her office yesterday morning. I can't say, she replied. I just know she's not available right now. He met her eyes. May I speak to someone who can say? Her expression didn't shift, but her posture tensed slightly. Sir, I understand you were expecting something, but we don't have anything on the calendar for you today. If you'd like, I can have someone in client services assist you with whatever it is you're here for. Darius inhaled slowly. I'm here for a meeting, not client services, not an ATM dispute, not an inquiry about interest rates. A meeting with Elizabeth Hannigan regarding acquisition. Her eyes flickered, not surprised, more like uncomfortable. Right. Well, I'll have someone look into that. She turned, heels clicking again as she returned to her desk without another word. Darius sat back, staring at the view beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city stretched outward in all directions, a sea of steel and glass and traffic, and yet somehow he felt smaller here than he had walking through the crowded streets below. The assistant picked up her phone and murmured quietly. Then another man appeared, tall, late 20s, suit just a little too big at the shoulders. Nervous energy followed him like perfume. He held a tablet and looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Mr. King. Yes, I'm Scott, one of the associates from strategic planning. He extended a hand. Darius shook it, firm and steady. So I looked into the issue, Scott said, eyes scanning the tablet as he shifted awkwardly. And it appears there may have been a miscommunication. Miss Hannigan's calendar was changed earlier this morning, but I can't confirm who made the adjustment. I'm still digging. So I was removed from the schedule. Well, not exactly removed. Just not listed anymore. And no one called. I'm sorry, Scott said quickly. Honestly, this isn't standard procedure. I've never seen a calendar wiped like this. Darius narrowed his eyes. Do you believe it was an error? Scott hesitated. I don't know, sir, but I'd like to help however I can. Would you mind waiting in one of our guest lounges while I try to get more clarity? I was told this meeting was to be held in the executive conference room. Yes, but, the room's currently booked. By whom? I don't have access to that, sir. Darius didn't speak, just stared at him, steady and unflinching. Scott shifted again, then gestured politely. Right this way. I'll get you situated while I try to locate someone from upper operations. The lounge he led him to was nothing like the sleek reception area. It was 2 floors down and tucked beside a row of unmarked doors, sparsely furnished with worn chairs and a cracked water cooler humming in the corner. No one else was there, just one security guard sitting behind a desk across the hall, flipping through a sports magazine. Darius glanced around. This is the guest lounge? Well, Scott stammered, it's one of them. We're having renovations done upstairs. Darius said nothing. He walked in, sat down, placed his briefcase on the floor. I'll be back soon, Scott said. Please don't hesitate if you need anything. The door clicked behind him. Darius leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He'd been in rooms like this before. Airports, lobbies, boardrooms where his credentials were enough. It never got easier. You learned to mask it, to smile through it. But the weight never changed. He thought of Hannigan, of the documents, the emails, the back and forth that spanned 4 months of negotiation. He thought of the equity partners waiting for confirmation, the funding group that would greenlight the acquisition once Kingsley's board signed off. And here he was, sitting in a holding room with a broken water cooler and peeling paint. The man leaned forward now, elbows on his desk, eyes locked on Darius, with a thin line of curiosity that came dressed as concern. Darius gave him a quick glance, then looked away. The silence dragged. Then the guard rose. Not fast, just enough to make a point. He walked casually down the hall, radio at his hip, posture stiff like he was waiting for something to go wrong. A few minutes later, another guard appeared. Taller, broader, a buzz cut and a coiled demeanor. The two exchanged glances, then pointed. Darius noticed it. How could he not? He was being watched like a trespasser, a threat, not a man who had arrived to buy the building these men worked in. His phone buzzed again. A message from his assistant. Still nothing. I called the main line, got bounced around. Should I push harder? He didn't respond. Not yet. Not until he knew exactly what was happening. He closed his eyes briefly, took a breath, and forced himself to remain still. They want you agitated, he told himself. They want a reason. He would not give it to them. Meanwhile, 1 floor above, a different kind of process was playing out. In the digital nerve center of the bank's security operations, a risk monitoring algorithm pinged red. A name had triggered a dormant flag in the internal profiling software, Darius King. The tag was years old, fed by an outdated data set designed to preemptively filter risk profiles using deeply flawed criteria. No criminal record, no pending litigation. Just markers, ethnicity, financial transactions that deviated from statistical averages, and recent travel patterns that had caused the system to assign him a low verification rating. A silent alert pushed through to internal security, unverified client flagged for further validation. On a separate monitor, a security officer reviewed live feed footage. He zoomed in. The camera showed Darius sitting calmly, one hand now resting on his knee, the other occasionally checking his phone. No raised voice, no outburst, no sign of aggression, just presence. That was enough. The guard tapped his earpiece. We've got eyes on subject. Quiet, but we're keeping watch. Roger that, came the response. Maintain position. He's still not in the system. Back downstairs, the first guard finally approached. Sir. Darius looked up, careful not to seem defensive. Yes. Everything all right? The guard's voice was even, but his stance betrayed the question. It wasn't an inquiry. It was a preamble. "Just waiting for a meeting," Darius said. "Been here a while." "Do you have someone's name?" "Elizabeth Hannigan, Senior VP." The guard frowned slightly. "Haven't seen anyone come looking." "I'm aware." The second guard now stood just a few feet behind the first, arms crossed. "You're sure you've got an appointment?" "Confirmed it yesterday." "Because reception didn't list anyone under that name this morning." "I checked the book." Darius let the silence speak for him. It was the same game, repackaged. The guards exchanged a look. The first one tilted his head slightly, like he was waiting for a reaction. "We just want to make sure you're not lost. These floors aren't open to the public without clearance." "I was escorted here," Darius replied, "by one of your associates." "Name?" "Scott. Strategic planning." "You got a last name?" He didn't offer it. "Uh-huh." The second guard pulled a small notepad from his chest pocket. "Mind if I take your name again?" Darius inhaled slowly. "I already gave it at the front desk." "Just double-checking." Darius glanced at the badge. "You first." The guard blinked, then offered a grudging shrug. "Riggs." "Then I'm Mr. King." Riggs jotted something. "All right, Mr. King. You sit tight." As they walked away, Darius's phone lit up again. A new message from his attorney. "Just heard from one of my contacts. They say your name's been flagged in Kingsley's internal system. Something about ID verification failure. Want me to escalate?" He stared at the message, pulse tightening. His ID had been scanned at reception. His background was clean. This wasn't a mistake. This was targeted, disguised as protocol. He typed a reply with deliberate calm. "Not yet. Let's see how far they go." A knock on the doorframe drew his attention. Scott had returned, but he looked different now. Sweaty, nervous. "Mr. King," he said, hesitating. "There's been some confusion. Enlighten me." "It seems Miss Hannigan's calendar was locked by corporate override. Nobody here has access to confirm your slot. She's also no longer in the building." She left. Apparently, there was a last-minute conference call with the board. They moved it off-site. "She didn't contact me. I can't explain that, but I promise I'm doing what I can." "What exactly are you doing?" Scott hesitated again, shifting on his feet. "Just trying to make sure you're taken care of, sir. These kinds of oversights happen." "This isn't an oversight," Darius said, standing slowly. "It's a pattern. I was told my appointment wasn't on the calendar, that it had been rescheduled. Then security starts circling me like I'm some kind of intruder. Now you're telling me Hannigan just left the building." "It's all very unusual," Scott admitted. "But I swear I'm not part of anything. I'm just trying to do my job." "Then do it." Scott nodded and backed out, phone already pressed to his ear. The guards kept watching. Darius sat down again. He was being isolated, delayed, monitored, and profiled, all under the guise of miscommunication. The worst part wasn't the overt distrust. It was the polished politeness of it all, the way it was wrapped in passive-aggressive procedure. They would smile to his face, all while dragging their feet and whispering to security. His phone vibrated again. Darius's jaw was tight, but he said nothing. The assistant at the executive floor had refused to follow up. Hannigan had left the building. The meeting he confirmed in writing had vanished. Now security was stationed like he'd broken in. He leaned forward slowly, pulled out his phone, and scrolled through his calendar. The 9:30 a.m. meeting was still there. He opened the attached email from Hannigan, dated 2 days ago. The subject line was clear: Confirmation Acquisition Discussion, Friday, 9:30 a.m. He tapped the dial icon beside her number and brought the phone to his ear. Before the second ring, a voice snapped to his right. "Sir, I'm going to need you to put the phone away." Darius turned to see Riggs walking in again, eyes locked on the phone. "Excuse me," Darius said calmly. "You're not allowed to record in here," Riggs said. "I'm not recording anything." "Doesn't matter. We need to maintain security." Darius frowned. "I'm making a phone call to a business contact. That's not a violation of anything." Riggs stepped closer, palms slightly out like he was addressing a threat. "Put away. You've already been warned once." "I haven't been warned at all," Darius said, standing now. "And if you're going to accuse me of something, be specific. Otherwise, I suggest you get someone from management down here immediately." Riggs's posture changed. It stiffened. Behind him, the second guard stood a little straighter. "Don't raise your voice, sir," Riggs said, eyes narrowing. Darius looked around the empty corridor. "There's no one to disturb." "Still need you to keep it down," Riggs said. "Policy. Is there a policy on how long to detain a scheduled guest without explanation?" "Sir, you're not being detained." "Then I'm free to go?" "You're free to remain where you are until we resolve this." "Which is it?" Darius asked. "Free to leave or not?" Riggs stepped in closer, now within arm's reach. "We don't want trouble, but if you keep escalating." Darius repeated. "Because I'm using a phone?" "Because you're raising your voice, sir. I've been silent for over an hour. Now I speak and suddenly I'm aggressive." Riggs glanced toward the second guard, then back at Darius. "We're just asking you to cooperate." "I've been cooperating," Darius said. "Now you can either bring down your branch manager, or I will contact my attorney and corporate." Riggs didn't move. "Put the phone down. Last warning." Darius locked eyes with him. "I'll call from outside." He turned toward the exit of a lounge. Riggs stepped into his path. "Nope, not until we've cleared your status." Darius blinked. "My status?" "There was a mismatch in the system. You're flagged for re-verification." "I'm here on a confirmed appointment, with email and ID. I gave everything at reception." "Doesn't match what our systems show." "Then update your system." "That's not my job," Riggs said. "Mine is to keep this floor secure." "From me?" Darius asked. "Is that what you're implying?" Riggs didn't answer, but his jaw flexed. Darius raised the phone again. "Then I'll call corporate now. On speaker. You can listen if you're so concerned." Riggs moved faster this time. He reached out and gripped Darius's wrist, not violently, but enough to send a message. "I said put away." "Let go of me," Darius said quietly. "Now." Riggs held on for a second longer, then released and stepped back. "We're trying to keep this simple." "It's already complicated," Darius said, rubbing his wrist. He took a deep breath and stepped around Riggs, ignoring the second guard now hovering at the doorway. He stepped back into the main hall and moved toward the main lobby. The guards followed. He could feel their presence behind him, two silent shadows with too much authority and not enough justification. When he entered the main floor again, the contrast hit him like a slap. Light, bright, busy, customers chatting, tellers smiling, business as usual. Yet when Darius walked through, every head turned. He felt it in the air, the ripple of whispers as two security guards trailed behind him like he was some shoplifter. He turned toward the information desk and raised his voice just enough to carry. "I'd like to speak with the branch director, please." Immediately, the woman behind the desk blinked, her eyes darting past him to Riggs and the second guard. She hesitated. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice." "I'm not shouting," Darius said. "I'm requesting assistance." "You're disturbing other clients." Darius turned slowly. "You mean these?" He gestured to a handful of people now watching from nearby teller lines. "They're disturbed because your staff is following me around like I'm dangerous." "Sir, if you don't calm down, we'll have to ask you to leave." "Ask away," Darius said. "But first, I'm calling corporate. On record." He raised his phone again. Riggs moved in, hand reaching. "Do not record inside the bank, sir. You've been warned." "I'm not recording," Darius said. "I'm calling my attorney." "Hand me the device," Riggs said. "Now, touch me again," Darius said, low and steady, "and I will file a civil complaint effective today." A silence fell, tension thick as wet concrete. Finally, the branch manager emerged from the back, Gregory Sims, the same man who had dismissed Darius earlier. He looked alarmed, but still calm enough to think he had the upper hand. "Mr. King," Sims said, stepping forward. "What seems to be the problem here?" "The problem," Darius said, eyes unblinking, "is that your staff erased my appointment, flagged me for security without cause, refused to confirm anything, and now threatens me for using a phone." Sims smiled like a man trying to contain a fire with a garden hose. "Let's lower our voices, please. This is a professional environment." "It stopped being professional when your guards began trailing me like I was shoplifting," Darius replied. "And when your system decided to profile me based on garbage data." "No one is profiling anyone," Sims said quickly. "Then explain the system mismatch," Darius said. "Explain why a verified client with a confirmed meeting is now being treated like a trespasser." Darius's phone was still in his hand, though he hadn't dialed yet, his thumb hovering just above the screen. Sims spoke again, tone lower, trying to sound reasonable but failing miserably. "Mr. King, if you would just calm down, we can sort this out professionally." "I've been calm," Darius said. "I've been calm through erasure, delay, and intimidation. What I need now is acknowledgement and access to the meeting I scheduled weeks ago." Sims took a step forward. "Let's just go back to the guest lounge." "No," Darius interrupted, not loudly, but with finality. "No more lounges. No more holding pens. If Hannigan won't come to me, you bring someone else who can authorize access to that floor." "That's not how it works," Sims said, voice rising despite himself. "You don't dictate procedures in this building." "I'm trying to finalize a business deal with your board," Darius said, holding up his briefcase. "In this briefcase is the documentation confirming my role in the pending acquisition of Kingsley National Bank. My presence here is not only justified, it's central to your future." A murmur moved through the watching crowd. Someone gasped quietly. A man at the customer service counter leaned closer to listen. Sims hesitated again. "That's not possible," he said, but there was doubt in his voice now. "You?" "Yes." "Me," Darius replied. "And the longer this continues, the more irreversible this becomes." Before Sims could speak again, a new voice cut through the lobby like a whip. "That's enough." The words came from a man in a black tactical suit striding from a side corridor, a radio clipped to his chest and a headset wrapping around his ear. He was built thick across the shoulders and wore a badge that read Chief of Security E. Roman. His eyes scanned the space with the impatience of someone who believed they'd already wasted too much time. "What's going on here?" Roman barked. Sims turned toward him, relief flooding his expression. "He's disrupting operations," Sims said quickly. "Refused to return to the holding area. Threatened legal action. Refused to hand over his phone." Roman's face hardened as he walked straight toward Darius, who didn't move. "Is that right?" Roman asked, his tone a sharp command. "What I've done," Darius said, voice level, "is request a meeting I scheduled with your executive team. I've been ignored, redirected, and falsely profiled. Now I'm being threatened for standing in your lobby." "You raise your voice," Sims added. "You've made staff and customers uncomfortable. You made me wait for 2 hours without cause," Darius snapped. "You called security on a client. You erased my meeting." Roman stepped even closer, now within arm's length, his body language coiled like a spring. "You're going to lower your voice and hand me your phone." "You have no right to take my phone," Darius said. "And I haven't broken a single law." "You're creating a disturbance." "I'm a business partner," Darius said. "You're going to regret this." Roman's eyes narrowed. "That a threat?" "It's a fact," Darius said. "You don't know who you're speaking to." "I know exactly what I'm seeing," Roman said. "A man refusing to comply with security. Because your security is abusing protocol." "Enough," Roman snapped. "Turn around." "No," Darius said, more to himself than to Roman. "You're making a mistake." Roman's hand shot out, gripping Darius's upper arm, and Darius instinctively pulled back. "Do not touch me," he said, voice rising now. Roman didn't hesitate. "You're resisting," he barked, then turned his head. "Remove him from the premises." The second guard lunged forward, grabbing the back of Darius's blazer. "Let go of me," Darius shouted. "I'm not going anywhere until I speak to." But the guards weren't listening. Roman nodded once, and within seconds, Darius was yanked backward, his briefcase falling from his hand and thudding against the floor. Customers gasped. A teller behind the counter stood frozen, eyes wide. One of them hit the emergency alert button beneath the counter, triggering a subtle red light in the ceiling. "Let go." Darius tried to plant his feet, but the grip on his arms was too tight. "This is assault. I'm a business partner, not a criminal." Roman's voice was loud, declarative. "We're dealing with an aggressive trespasser. Maintain protocol." Darius was dragged through the marble lobby, his blazer bunched up at the shoulders, his shirt riding up his back. Phones were out now, customers holding them up, recording. Some silently, others with gasps and murmurs. "Is this real?" someone whispered. "What did he even do?" a woman asked. "He said he was buying the bank," said another, astonished. "They're dragging him out." "No way," someone muttered. "This is going viral." The glass doors opened, and the city's noise met them at the entrance. Roman held the door wide as the guards shoved Darius through it, then tossed his briefcase after him like trash. Darius stumbled forward, catching himself just before his knees hit the sidewalk. The blazer was wrinkled. His phone clattered beside him. Behind him, Roman stood in the doorway, arms crossed, chest rising and falling with self-righteous satisfaction. Darius stared at him from the ground, breathing hard, his muscles tense. Across the street, a bystander held up a phone, still recording. "You just made a mistake," Darius said, voice low but clear. "You made the mistake the world's going to see." Roman shook his head like he didn't care. "Stay off bank property." Behind him, two teenage girls stood across the street, one of them holding her phone upright, thumb tapping quickly as the video of Darius being pulled by his blazer replayed. "Oh my God," the shorter one whispered, "you got it all." "Of course I did," said the other, angling the phone to show the footage. "Dude didn't do anything. They just yanked him like some thief." "Post it," the first girl said, her eyes wide. "Right now." The second girl nodded, fingers flying. She added a caption, "This man was just dragged out of Kingsley Bank for doing what? Standing there while black? Hashtag bank while black, hashtag racial profiling, hashtag disgusting." Within moments the post was up, spreading like a spark dropped in dry grass. As the girls walked off, phones still lit, others nearby began to check their own screens. In the cafe next door, a man saw the clip on his feed and muttered aloud, "What the hell? That's right across the street." He turned his phone and showed it to the woman beside him. "This just happened, like now." She frowned at the screen. "I walk by that place every day. Looks like he was just trying to talk to someone. They jumped him like he had a bomb. They didn't even ask questions. Just grabbed him." Yep. 10 minutes passed. The video began surfacing across Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. The hashtags multiplied. Hashtag bankwhileblack. Hashtag Kingsley profiling. Hashtag justice for Darius. His name wasn't public yet, but the image, him on the ground in a suit, briefcase beside him, shoulders tensed from being dragged, was already becoming a symbol. Another user, someone with the handle @RealInsiderHR, quote tweeted the clip. "Worked at this branch. This isn't the first time. We raised complaints about racial bias in 2022 and again last year. Management did nothing. Fired the wrong people and protected the problem." That tweet took off like a rocket. Thousands of likes in minutes. Darius, unaware of the exact scale yet, turned away from the bank and walked 3 blocks to a quieter intersection, his phone pressed to his ear. "Yes," he said. "It happened." On the other end, his legal counsel Malcolm Ray cursed under his breath. "How bad?" "Public," Darius replied. "Very public. They had phones out. One woman even whispered that I said I was buying the bank, like it was some fantasy. They assaulted you, pulled my arm, grabbed the back of my blazer, called me a threat, didn't ask for anything but my compliance." "Jesus. You all right?" "Physically," Darius said. "Legally, we're about to find out." "I'm mobilizing now," Malcolm said. "We'll file official complaints by end of day. But I've got another angle. You still want this acquisition?" "Yes." "Then you don't disappear. You show them who you are." "I already did. They just weren't ready." Back inside the bank, the tension hadn't subsided. Sims paced behind the counter, eyes darting to the back offices, then to the front doors. Staff whispered in corners. Customers who had witnessed the event kept glancing at their screens, whispering, murmuring the words they didn't say aloud. Lawsuit, exposure, discrimination. One teller, the one who'd hit the emergency button, leaned toward her coworker and whispered, "Did you see Twitter?" The other nodded. "He's already viral. Look." She turned her phone. The clip was at 60,000 views and rising. "I didn't think," the first teller began. "That's the problem," the second said. "No one here ever thinks." Sims turned toward them. "Phones away. Focus on customers." He was a customer, one of them said under her breath. Sims pretended not to hear. In the executive floor upstairs, the mood was no better. An emergency email had been sent to corporate. Lawyers were already circling. Elizabeth Hannigan, who had indeed stepped out earlier for a conference call, re-entered the building just as the executive assistant thrust a phone into her hand. "You need to see this," the assistant said. Hannigan's eyes scanned the screen. As the video played, her face paled. "That's Darius," she muttered. "Yes," the assistant said. "And that's your branch." "Today, less than an hour ago. I confirmed with him yesterday. Apparently, your system didn't." What happened to his meeting slot? Some override flagged his profile. Override from where? No one knows yet. Security claims it came from Risk Operations. Risk says it didn't come from them. Now everyone's pointing fingers. Hannigan was already walking. "Get Malcolm Ray on the phone. Tell him I'll call Darius personally. And get Sims in my office." Now, down on the street, Darius's phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from a major news outlet. The headline read, "Black man dragged from Kingsley National. Was there to finalize deal." He exhaled slowly, scrolling down. The photo they'd used was still blurry, taken from a customer's phone, but it was unmistakable. Him, his briefcase, the guards. Behind him, the bank's logo shimmered like a cruel joke. The next buzz came from his venture team. A text thread lit up with panic concern. "D, are you okay? We just saw the clip. We're on standby. Media wants a statement. Should we pull the offer?" He typed quickly. "No, not yet. Let them panic. Let the world see what it looks like when institutions choke on their own prejudice." 10 minutes later, Hannigan's call came through. Darius stared at the screen for a moment, then answered. "Elizabeth." "Darius," she said, breath tight. "I just saw the video. I had no idea this was happening. Your assistant said you left the building. Your calendar was wiped. Security said I was flagged as a threat. None of that was authorized," she said quickly. "And I am so sorry for what you've been through. This is unacceptable." "Yes," he said. "It is. We're investigating what happened. But please know, this doesn't reflect Kingsley as a whole." "Doesn't it?" he asked. Silence stretched on the line. "We still want to move forward with the acquisition," she said finally. "And I believe this only makes it more necessary. Your leadership could prevent this from ever happening again." "I agree," he said, "but not under the same leadership. People will be held accountable. Publicly." "Understood," she said. "Would you consider a press statement? Together." "Let's wait," Darius replied. "The internet's already doing the heavy lifting." And it was. He just stood in a gray tailored suit, hands clasped behind his back, eyes level, jaw set. Inside, the staff watched from behind tinted windows. Sims hovered behind a wall near reception, whispering with another manager. Riggs stood stiff near the lobby entrance, arms crossed, watching the scene spiral into chaos. "Who is he?" one of the tellers asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. "Why are people chanting his name?" "He said he was buying the bank," someone whispered. "And you dragged him out," another snapped. "Now the world knows." Outside, a black BMW 760 Li with government plates pulled up to the curb. The back door opened smoothly, and a woman stepped out, heels sharp against the concrete, her Navy power suit pressed with military precision. Her hair was sleek, pulled back in a low twist, and a silver badge hung from her lanyard. Regional Investment Director Dana Whitaker. The crowd parted as she moved forward, her eyes immediately locking on Darius. "Darius," she called. Her voice was loud, cutting through the murmurs. "Darius King?" Darius turned, recognizing her immediately. "Donna." "What the hell is going on?" she asked, already stepping toward him, eyes scanning the situation, the cameras, the bystanders. "Are you all right?" "Define all right," he said. "I've been profiled, erased, restrained, and thrown out of a building I was trying to buy." Dana turned toward the bank, her jaw tensing. "They laid hands on you?" "Their head of security. Dragged me like a shoplifter." "Jesus," she muttered. "Why didn't you call me?" "I tried calling Hannigan. Her assistant said she left the building." My name disappeared from the calendar. Then came the security flags. "I don't care who erased what," Dana snapped. "You're not just a client. You're about to own half this institution." Behind the glass doors, Sims watched her, speaking to Darius. His stomach dropped. He knew her. Everyone did. Dana Whitaker was not someone you ignored. She was the voice of the board in the tri-state region. She had final authority on acquisitions. "Get her in here," Sims barked. "Now." A junior associate ran to the door, cracked it open just enough to wave her in. "MS. Whitaker, would you please step inside?" She turned her head slowly toward the door. "Not unless you bring your branch manager out here," she said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Now." Sims hesitated, then straightened his jacket and walked into view, trying to hide the sweat on his forehead. "Ms. Whitaker, I'm sure this is a misunderstanding." Dana cut him off mid-sentence. "You laid hands on Darius King," she said. "Do you have any idea who he is?" "We weren't given confirmation of his appointment," Sims said quickly. His calendar was, "Don't finish that sentence," Dana said. "Because it's already a lie. I saw the invite myself. The board saw it. His name was on every schedule for this morning. So explain to me how a man in a tailored suit holding signed documentation is labeled a threat and physically removed from your lobby." "It was security protocol," Sims said. "They were acting on an internal flag." "A flag created by your own broken profiling software," she said, "which corporate has been instructed to suspend. Or did you ignore that memo too?" "We followed the rules as best we could," Sims said, flustered. "It was a misunderstanding." "No," Dana said. "This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was contempt. This was arrogance. And this was racism. You assumed he didn't belong. You humiliated him. And now you've humiliated Kingsley in front of the entire country." The crowd outside erupted in applause. Darius remained still, watching. Sims's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You're relieved," Dana said. "Effective immediately. HR will be in contact. Security is no longer under your command." "You can't. I just did." She turned to the guards still standing inside the doors. "Open them." They hesitated, then stepped aside. The doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Dana turned to Darius. "You're coming back in. On your terms. You are the reason Kingsley has a future, and it starts right now." Darius nodded once, then stepped past the crowd, his shoes quiet against the stone. He walked through the doors, back into the bank that had thrown him out, with cameras filming every step. People clapped as he entered. Some staff stared, stunned. Others lowered their heads. One younger banker whispered, "I didn't know who he was." Another replied, "That's the problem. You didn't care who he was." Dana led him through the lobby, past the glass offices, into the executive wing, where his meeting should have begun hours ago. "We'll get to the bottom of how your name was erased," she said. "That's already underway." Darius pulled out the chair at the head of the table, but didn't sit immediately. He set down his briefcase, opened it, removed a single black portfolio, and placed it on the wood with careful precision. "Let's not waste time," he said, voice calm but firm. "You've all seen the footage. You know what happened this morning. I was profiled, detained, and publicly humiliated in the lobby of the institution I'm about to acquire." A few members shifted uncomfortably. One, a balding man with silver glasses, cleared his throat. "Mr. King, we deeply regret." "Regret means nothing," Darius said, cutting him off, "unless it's followed by action. I was supposed to meet with your executive team at 9:30. I confirmed that appointment. My presence was expected. And yet someone, either by willful negligence or malicious intent, erased that appointment from the system, allowing outdated security protocols to treat me as a threat rather than a stakeholder. We've already launched an internal inquiry, another board member said. We believe the calendar issue was caused by, spare me the temporary excuses, Darius interrupted again. Because the real issue is deeper than a missing time slot. It's systemic, and it's cultural. If I had walked into that building white, in jeans and sneakers, no one would have followed me. No one would have demanded my phone. No one would have laid a hand on me. The room was silent. Instead, he continued, I walked in wearing a $5,000 suit with documents worth hundreds of millions in equity, and your staff saw a problem instead of a partner. I was offered no water, no office, no respect. But I was offered suspicion. I was offered silence. And eventually, I was offered violence. Dana Whitaker entered the room then, having finished her press update in the lobby. She moved quickly, sat to Darius's left, and nodded once, signaling him to proceed. Before we finalize this acquisition, Darius said, I want to be absolutely clear about the changes that will follow. This specific branch, was chosen as the flagship site for the Kingsley Equity Renaissance Project, a model of financial justice, a symbol of community reinvestment. But now it's become a case study in institutional failure. So every single person responsible for what happened to me this morning will be reviewed. Every policy that led to it will be rewritten. And every public commitment made by this institution will be followed by measurable action, or I walk. A woman across the table, Ms. Eleanor Weiss, head of compliance, leaned forward. Mr. King, we've prepared a joint statement of apology and a new diversity committee oversight plan that we'd like to propose today. We believe this is an opportunity for true reform. Darius didn't blink. You're right, it is. But that starts with transparency. I want the names of everyone involved in the override that erased my meeting. I want their internal emails reviewed. I want body cam footage pulled. And I want Riggs and Sims suspended immediately, pending termination review. Understood, Dana said before anyone else could respond. Consider it done. Another board member, a man in a maroon tie, leaned forward. And what about the acquisition timeline? The timeline proceeds, Darius said. I still believe in this institution's potential. But from this moment on, I'm no longer approaching it as a partner. I'm approaching it as its future. Outside the boardroom, the media frenzy hadn't calmed. Every major network had dispatched a crew. Local leaders were gathering. Protesters had grown in number and now carried coordinated signage with bold messages. Dignity is not a threat. This man owns you. And from humiliation to ownership. Inside, the conversation shifted to logistics, asset transfers, personnel adjustments, public relations fallout. But Darius remained focused. There's one more thing, he said. When this deal closes, I want this branch renamed the Darius King Equity Center. And I want a plaque in the lobby detailing exactly what happened on June 11th, with a statement of commitment to accountability. Because justice without memory is just repetition. The room was silent again. No one objected. What had once been a self-satisfied hum of business, as usual, had turned into an echo chamber of fear, anticipation, and reckoning. Staff walked softly. Conversations were hushed. And behind closed doors on the top floor, heads were beginning to roll. Darius sat at the end of the long conference table, flanked by his transition team. On his left sat Dana Whitaker, her sleeves rolled up, coffee in one hand, a notepad in the other. To his right, Malcolm Ray and his compliance lead, Sonia Ellison, were reviewing personnel reports. Let's start with Gregory Sims, Darius said. Where is he? Dana flipped through a file and looked at the HR director standing by the wall. He's waiting downstairs in the disciplinary office, the director said. We've prepared the termination letter per protocol. Did you finish the internal review of his communications from yesterday? Sonia asked without looking up. Yes, the director replied. He was the one who flagged the override for Darius's appointment. He forwarded the flag to security without verifying it, even though he had direct knowledge of the scheduled meeting. So not only did he ignore protocol, Malcolm said, he did it with full awareness of who Darius was. Correct, Dana confirmed. He also instructed reception to stall the visitor and avoid any scene until cleared, which is what set this whole thing into motion. Bring him up, Darius said. The room stayed quiet as Gregory Sims was escorted inside. He walked with fake confidence, eyes flicking around, stopping just short of the head of the table. "Mr. King," he said. "I want to start by—" "Stop," Darius said. "You knew who I was." Sims's throat bobbed as he swallowed. There were some inconsistencies in the system. "I was trying to protect the bank." "From what?" Darius asked. "A scheduled meeting? A man in a suit." "It was a misjudgment," Sims said, his voice lower now. "That's not misjudgment. That's negligence with racial bias," Sonia said. "You undermined an acquisition your branch desperately needed, and you put the institution at legal risk." "You're terminated, effective immediately," Dana said. "Security will escort you out through the rear entrance." "Wait," Sim started, stepping forward. "You can't just—" "You're done," Darius said, rising from his chair. "And every customer who walked through that lobby yesterday will know why." 2 uniformed guards stepped in behind Sims. He turned, stunned and pale, then followed them out of the room without another word. Darius sat again, took a breath. Next, the HR director looked down. Ethan Roman, head of security. Dana tapped her pen. "We reviewed his radio traffic and video footage. He escalated force before attempting any de-escalation. He ignored the request for identification verification and physically removed Mr. King from the premises." "Where is he?" Darius asked. "Still on site," HR confirmed. "His badge has been disabled, and we've suspended access to all security systems." "Bring him in." A moment later, Roman stepped into the room, his presence as stiff as ever. No radio, no headset, just him and a hollow attempt at composure. "You don't get to speak," Dana said before he could open his mouth. "You laid your hands on a principal investor and removed him without cause. You will be held personally liable in the civil suit we're preparing. Your security license will be reviewed by state oversight," Sonia added. "And your employment is terminated as of now." "Escort him," Dana said, pointing to the hall. This time, there were no guards. Just silence as Roman walked out, his steps heavy, the door closing behind him like a final verdict. "Receptionist," Darius asked, flipping the page in his folder. "Name is Linda Harris," HR said. "Filed a memo about an unfamiliar visitor in the executive lobby. She referred to Mr. King in her incident report as possibly lost or impersonating a client. Is she still employed?" "For now," Dana said. "We filed a formal racial bias complaint. She'll be placed on unpaid leave pending retraining and reevaluation." "Make it public," Darius said. "We said we'd be transparent. So let's be." "Done," Sonia said. The HR director nodded and stepped out, making the necessary calls. Darius leaned back and turned to Malcolm. "What's the media landscape?" Malcolm pulled up his tablet. "The major outlets are running it hourly. CNN, MSNBC, Bloomberg. The story's no longer just about racial profiling. It's about systemic bias in corporate finance, the power of viral truth," and he paused, then smiled faintly. "What happens when the man you underestimate owns the pen?" "Stock," Darius asked. "Kingsley's dipped 7% since the video surfaced," Malcolm said. "Another 4% since we announced the terminations. But analysts say it's a short-term shake. Your acquisition is stabilizing the long-term projection." Dana added, "Investors like the leadership pivot. You've become a symbol of accountability. The narrative is working." "And the board?" "They're moving fast," she said. "We've initiated the Kingsley Equity Transformation Plan. Policy rewrites, inclusive hiring targets, and cultural sensitivity training. Budget has already been allocated. Implementation starts next week." "We're not just checking boxes," Darius said. "I want results. I want measurable change. We're not burying what happened. We're making it a case study." Sonia smiled. "Justice begins with accountability." Darius stood nearby, watching a middle-aged couple read the words slowly, the woman placing her hand to her heart when she reached the final line. She whispered something to the man beside her, then turned, meeting Darius's eyes with a soft smile. He returned it with a nod, not out of pride, but purpose. 1 year had passed since that day, since he'd been dragged by the arm and blazer across this same floor. The memory had not faded, nor had the impact. And while the world moved on in news cycles, Darius had ensured the culture here would never forget. Not with shame, but with truth. The transformation hadn't been overnight. It began with difficult conversations, most of them behind closed doors. One of the first meetings Darius scheduled after the acquisition wasn't with the board or his PR team. It was with the very people who had wronged him. Sims had been fired, but others remained. Linda, the receptionist, now sat across from him in a small conference room nearly a year ago, her hands wringing a paper coffee cup, eyes glassy with shame. "I know what I did," she'd said softly. "I didn't mean to be racist. I saw someone I didn't recognize and panicked." Darius had watched her, patient. "Panic is natural," he replied. "Bias isn't. It's learned. And worse, it's taught to others when it goes unchecked." "I've been going to training," she said. "Reading. Listening. I didn't expect to still be here, honestly." "You're here because accountability includes restoration," Darius told her. "That doesn't mean what happened is excused. It means we give people a chance to prove they've grown." "I want to," she'd whispered. "Then start with the next client you don't recognize. Treat them like they belong here until they prove otherwise, not the reverse." That conversation became the model. One by one, he met with staff who had watched, hesitated, or stayed silent. Some left, unwilling to reflect. But many stayed, and more importantly, they evolved. The branch's retraining wasn't limited to slide decks or generic seminars. Darius brought in historians, sociologists, conflict resolution experts. He introduced mentorship programs connecting senior staff with young professionals of color. Community leaders hosted workshops. Staff shadowed clients from disadvantaged backgrounds to understand the systemic barriers they faced. Darius implemented a policy requiring every employee to attend quarterly impact sessions, face-to-face forums with clients who shared stories of exclusion or discrimination. The stories weren't easy to hear, but they were necessary. Growth never came without discomfort. Outside the branch, Kingsley's image had shifted dramatically. What was once a national PR disaster had become a story of conscious reinvention. Other financial institutions began adopting pieces of Darius's initiative: equity councils, transparent hiring dashboards, diversity-led investment programs. The media continued covering his journey, but Darius had stopped giving interviews after the first 6 months. He said everything he needed to say by action. Inside the branch, changes were visible. The teller counter now had translation cards in 6 languages. The lending team included a housing advocate who helped low-income applicants navigate the maze of homeownership. Monthly community roundtables were held in the downstairs conference room. Teenagers interned during the summer. Local artists displayed work inside. And upstairs, behind a glass wall that was now permanently transparent, Darius had left his office modest, but open. It was a message: power, when justly held, doesn't hide. That morning, as the sun poured across the lobby floor, he stood quietly at the edge of the second-floor balcony, watching staff greet clients by name. He saw Riggs, once a silent observer to the injustice, now lead the community partnership desk. After months of reflection and a formal apology, Riggs had asked for a meeting. "I don't know what to say that hasn't already been said," he told Darius. "I didn't speak up. I let it happen. I told myself it wasn't my call, but it was." "You stayed silent," Darius had said, "but you can speak now. The difference is what you do with the next moment." Riggs didn't just speak. He helped build an outreach program connecting the bank to underserved youth. Now, he was the first face many young customers saw when they walked in. Darius watched as Riggs leaned over the counter and explained a savings account to a boy no older than 10. The boy grinned and nodded. That was change. That was the work. Dana approached from behind. "There's a city official here to see you," she said. "Wants to talk about expanding the program to other branches. Tell them to wait 10 minutes." Darius replied. "I'm still watching." She followed his gaze. Down below, Linda guided a young immigrant couple through their first account setup, her tone respectful, her words slow and clear. Behind her, a woman in a hijab received loan assistance from a formerly aloof financial advisor, now sitting across from her, not above her. The scene played out like a tapestry of redemption, not from forced policy, but from personal awakening. "You think they'll stay the course?" Dana asked. "Not all of them," Darius said, "but enough will. And if they don't, we keep teaching. We keep the lights on. We keep the truth loud." They stood there a moment longer. Downstairs, a client stopped to take a picture of the plaque. Another asked to meet the man behind the mission. Darius eventually descended the stairs, greeting clients, shaking hands, listening more than speaking. He didn't carry a podium. He didn't wear a badge. He didn't need to remind people who he was. He let the building do that for him. At noon, as the staff gathered for a group meeting in the community hall, Dana stood before them and gestured toward Darius. "1 year ago today," she began, "this branch failed to live up to its promise. But one man held us accountable, not to shame us, but to invite us to do better." Darius stepped forward, gaze steady. "You all know what happened. You were here. Some of you watched. Some of you acted. Some of you did nothing. But what matters more than who we were that day is who we are now." He looked across the crowd, faces old and new, some still healing, some now leading. "We are proof that change is possible. That justice doesn't end in anger. It begins there, but it lives in transformation. That is what this place will represent, not because we forgot the past, but because we built a future with at the end." If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter in our journey. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you think of the plot? Which part hit hardest? Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Your feedback helps shape the stories to come.